It is Monday, the 14th of April, 2025, time for the Gettysburg Borough Stormwater Authority meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order. Welcome. No other opening remarks or announcements. Any announcements from the board? No? Okay. As usual, we have a consent agenda. We have 3 items: a motion to approve the agenda as presented, a motion to approve all bills and payrolls as presented, and a motion to approve the February 10, 2025 meeting minutes. And I know, Kurt, you made a suggested change on the Pliget wording.
Looks like it's been addressed.
Good.
Thank you, Karen.
Any other comments, questions on those 3? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Kurt. Is there a second? Thank you, John. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Not hearing any, it passes. Thank you very much. Public comment? I don't think so. No public here today. Financial updates. Charles.
Year-to-date revenue over expenses, we are running a slight deficit to be expected, deficit of 35,000. No surprise there because this year's billing cycle has yet to commence, which will be July 1st. In our Pliget statement, member Kramer suggested a little tweak in the wording to Pliget in the minutes. So this is the Pliget statement as of March 31st, 2025. $589,000 are in our investment account, with $47,000 over in ACB, which is our liquid account that we pay bills out of. So the authority is in good financial condition at the moment, pending or barring rather any unforeseen episodes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I know Chad's going to talk a little later about some contingency that we're going to have to consider on one project. Pat?
Okay, the question goes to, we're in deficit, but we have money in our checking account.
Correct.
Trying to figure out how that works. I would assume if we have money in the checking account, we wouldn't be in deficit.
So what's in the checking account is different than what is budgeted for this fiscal year.
It's a budget deficit, but go ahead.
Yeah.
You can explain.
Yeah, it's a budget deficit. So that will reverse when we send out the bills for this year. So the money that's currently sitting in Pliget and the money that's sitting in our checking account is revenue that was generated in prior years.
Okay.
But if you're looking at your home checkbook, we're not in a deficit. We have plenty of money. But from a budgetary perspective, as we plan the budget.
Right.
From a yearly budget.
Exactly, an annual budget, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, questions? Deborah's not here tonight, so we're not going to get an update on the payments received. But Adam, do you have anything on the liens?
Yeah, I do. Since we had met last, the liens were filed, and there were a few more that subsequently were filed after that, because there's always situations where people maybe didn't get the notice correctly, or it didn't go to the husband and wife, it just went to the husband, something like that. I forget off the top of my head the exact number. I believe it was 46. It was in the 40s. It's usually in the low 40s, a little higher this year. And as usual, within 2 weeks of those liens being filed, probably between a third and 35–40% of them paid. And then there are a few more that have been trickling in since then. So we've been collecting and satisfying those liens that were filed once we get word from Deborah that not only have they dropped off payment, but the check that they used did clear. And yeah, I mean, the system is the same as it has been, but nothing terribly out of the ordinary compared.
Okay. Ken, we make sure that if for some reason in June Deborah isn't able to make it, that we get a report on how we're doing and how many are outstanding at the time, okay? But I'm sure she'll be here to do that. Kurt?
There was a gentleman, several of us received emails from him that had a dispute about his bill and notification. Has that been resolved?
That was John?
I can speak to that one. We're working with the property owner to address that lien issue.
Okay.
But it is a lien that is rightfully filed.
Okay. Last I heard, you were going to meet with him. I don't know.
We did.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's being resolved.
Okay, great. They're working on it.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about liens or payments? Okay. Let's turn to old business, and the first is Robbie about the construction project update, the Gill.
Okay, the next contract is the sidewalk contract. Kinsley got the contract, but they have not started yet due to getting the tree well boxes in place before they can start the curbing. So looking, I think Chad filled me in, they're looking to start the week of the 21st,
That's correct.
next week.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else? The sidewalks look good.
The ones on the east side, next to
Yes.
the apartments, look great.
Great.
Right, that was in the first contract, yes. The second contract is from Food 101 driveway entrance all the way down to the other side of the railroad tracks, but not all the way to Constitution Avenue. The third contract will take care of the rest down to Constitution Avenue whenever we do the repaving of the street.
So that's, that's probably the $1,000 question. When, roughly, will North Washington Street be repaved?
July, August? Yeah.
Yeah, the idea is to make sure it's paid before college starts in the fall, in August. So we're looking at July.
Okay, okay.
And Mike, I think maybe this is the appropriate time on the agenda to speak about the YC request for change log. So we have been tracking all of the applications for payments to York Excavating from the very beginning. And just as a reminder, the arrangement was that the Stormwater Authority was putting in $330,000, I think. GMA was putting in $325,000, and then the borough was picking up the difference. The total contract's just over $1 million. It's about $1.1 million. So we're trying to break it into roughly thirds. That was the idea. So as we're going through the project and we're tracking all of these changes, as they're digging in the streets in Gettysburg, they're hitting a lot of things. Unknown gas lines, unknown stormwater lines, unknown sewer lines, and concrete road beds that we didn't know was there and the contractor had to dig through. So we've been tracking those all. This list that I just gave you includes the tracking of all of those things. So I distributed those to Mike and Charles and Mark Geis from the Municipal Authority, met with Mark. He had some comments, made some changes to that, but I think we're pretty satisfied at this point on each one of those three entities' share of those changes. Sometimes the contractor's out there doing work that, like from removal of concrete road bed for the installation of the water line, but it's also benefiting the storm line that's going to come later. So that change order kind of goes with all three parties. It's benefiting the borough because we're getting new curb and sidewalks, benefiting the Stormwater Authority because that's where we're going to put the storm pipe, benefiting the Gettysburg Municipal Authority because that's where we're putting the water line. So some of those items are just basically divided into thirds, and each one of those entities picks up 1/3 of that line item. So this is what's remaining of the change orders. I've already gone through a lot of the change orders with York Excavating and just didn't agree with some of them. And they've agreed to deleting a few. We had a lot of back and forth with this. I'm just letting you know that the skinny is this is a boiled down version from what we originally received. But this is the document that we're looking at. So Unless you guys have any objections to it, we're essentially looking at the municipal authority picking up about 14,000, the borough picking up about 28,000, and stormwater authority picking up about 17,000 of the total $59,000 worth of change orders, which is a lot of money, but I will remind you that the project was $1.1 million, so out of a $1.1 million, in terms of the quantity adjustments, we were within $500 or something like that. So this is really the only change. The only other big change was we did add a lot of sidewalks that we wanted the borough, and this is something I handled separately with the borough, that we wanted to add down on the right side. That was the only really other big change to the project, so.
What was our contingency for this project? Do you recall?
No, I don't know that. You mean from the original budget? I do not recall that.
Okay.
I usually say, rule of thumb though is when we're budgeting a project, we put around a 20% contingency. When we design it, we knock it down to about a 10% contingency before we bid it. Even after we bid it, I still tell clients to keep about a 5% contingency to get through construction, especially in an old town like Gettysburg where you're going to be hitting unknown things. So certainly we're within that 5%. I can't remember exactly what we put on our budget though, Mike.
So you're suggesting that the Stormwater Authority be on the hook for roughly $17,000?
Correct, yeah.
Of that.
And to be clear, the way that would work, it's the borough's contract with York Excavating. So all of the payments have been handled through an MOU between the authority and the borough. So the borough would essentially the Stormwater Authority would essentially pay the borough, just like municipal authority would pay the borough, and then the borough is going to cut one check to York Excavating Company.
I'm just looking at some of these things, Doesn't GMA know where their water lines are?
Not old ones. There are some old ones they don't, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
In this town, who knows what's there?
There was actually 2 old water lines that they consolidated on that street, yeah.
Question. Okay, we originally allocated how much from our authority?
330.
30.
Okay, I thought that was it, that the extras would all go to the other entities.
And I guess that's your prerogative if you wanted to take that stance. I mean,
So that the agreement was, my understanding was 300 or 330, whatever it was, and
Right.
that was it.
Right, and I think we were close to that, but given this, and this, my feeling is that because we don't really know what's under these streets.
I understand all that.
Yeah.
My career was in construction, I understand
Yeah.
every bit of it. I also understand agreements, if that was the agreement, then if we're gonna change that, then we have to acknowledge it, that it's a change.
Oh, this is definitely a change order, right?
Well, it's a change order, but a change in the agreement for
Yep.
splitting the cost.
You're right. So you're suggesting a new agreement between the
Well,
3
we're not following the old
entities?
one, the way I
Right.
understand it.
Okay. I mean, we could do an MOU of some sort to say, this is what we've agreed to now, but given these changes, based on this change order request.
yeah, the original agreement was in the form of an MOU.
Right.
So it would be appropriate to adjust the MOU. That would make sense.
And I think that would probably be wise under the circumstances. It doesn't have to be anything extensive,
Yeah,
but
it's
I
fairly
think
simple.
memorializing it
Right,
would be
and
wise.
we put the spreadsheet. to it,
Exactly,
right.
yeah. Bringing
Is that, would that do it?
Yeah, that would do it. Yeah, it's still a budget item, that we didn't.
Oh, absolutely, and
Account for.
and to be frank, I mean, I saw the first version of this was $6,000, and I had no problem with that. That's why I looked hard at all the other items, and, I said it facetiously that, doesn't GMA know where their stuff is? But I also understand that no one really knows what's going on under these streets all the time.
Yeah, if you look
So-
back at our agreement, we started out at 200-some thousand, then went to 300. So, the question is, how far are we gonna go?
Well, this is it,
So-
right? I mean, this closes this.
Yes, this essentially
It's on.
closes that first phase of the project. Now, keep in mind, we still need to connect all of the roof leaders at the college. There are some stormwater components with that, putting in the tree boxes. The chances of things to this magnitude changing with the next phase are pretty low. At this point, we pretty much know where everything is because we just got done redoing all of the underground utilities. Most of the work that's remaining is, aside from that trunk line that's only maybe a foot or two deep, everything else is surface work, curbs and sidewalks, street paving. So the chances of us hitting things are pretty negligible at this point. But I can't say that, I wouldn't sit here, I would be a bad engineer if I told you that there's no chance of anything else changing. But it's a pretty small chance.
What goes to how you,
I'm sorry?
if we revise the MOU, we should revise it so that we've addressed these issues.
Correct, and that's what we would do.
Okay.
I mean, because these are the issues.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
so
yeah.
far.
Well, for this phase.
Yeah.
And so, that's why I've, my question about contingency as we go forward to the next phase, how much contingency is appropriate?
Yeah, and to be fair, I didn't even anticipate that the Stormwater Authority would even have a part of the next phase. The next phase is all basically borough money. It's CDBG money we're using, grant money. So again, I would say that there's a really low chance. The last phase is with DCNR money, C2P2 money, so that there's a really low chance that I would say that the borough would be looking to come back to the Stormwater Authority for any additional funds in either of those two phases.
I'm suggesting that, sounds like we have to revise the MOU.
Mm-hmm.
That when we revise it in such a way that we cover all this.
Cover
So-
everything in this phase, yes.
Whatever.
But going forward, but see, I mean, the issue is going forward, just so we're all on the same page, that we don't think, we being the Stormwater Authority, we don't think that we're going to be spending any money in the next phase. And I just want to know, is that realistic?
Yeah, I would say there's a real low chance of the Stormwater Authority having any part of the next two phases.
So
But
we
again, I
can clean
don't-
up the first phase.
I would never say that any construction in the borough, there's a chance that there's something that we didn't know about. You know what I mean? So it would be bad advice for me to ever give to the Stormwater Authority, even if we were paving a street, that we weren't going to find some really shallow storm drain. That happens all the time. So a really low chance, but I do not anticipate anything with the Stormwater Authority with the next two phases, but again, I've been wrong before with that.
Okay. You good?
Not really. Yeah, because the issue isn't whether we have additional costs. The issue is whether we authorize paying any of those. So we have to
Whether we
define-
should,
Yeah, no,
Right.
whether we are allowed to by the memorandum of understanding.
so you would suggest that we have a memorandum of understanding changed, a new one, and then we vote on that with these additional 17,000, whatever.
Yeah,
That's what-
if the board decides to accept those.
Okay.
That's it.
So just if the authority chooses to not pay the 17,000 and change, the borough will have to.
Yeah, and that was the original agreement.
I understand. I guess then the question becomes, do we think as a board that these changes are legitimate changes? Then it's just a question of timing. If we say yes, then it's just a question of paying back the borough. If not, then that's that.
I am in favor of the authority paying the $17,000 difference.
Okay? John, any comment?
I see a few on here that I could probably make a good argument for, but the amount of time and the amount of stuff I've dug in this town, there's nothing on here that surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, well, one thing does surprise me. We didn't find any wooden sewer lines,
Mm.
because in that area, that is still possible.
No wood. A lot of clay, no
A lot
wood.
of clay, no wood. Okay.
So, and the fact that they found water lines, gas lines that they didn't know were there, the way they used to tear down houses, they used to cut them off the curb. Some of them I've dug up in this town where they dug a gas line off and stuffed a rag in it, and that was the way they
They
the way they
could.
terminated the gas line. So, I mean, you find anything in this town when you dig, I mean, so I think it's fair. We could sit here and argue about, but we'd be arguing about nickel and dime stuff, and, I mean, it's quite obviously that nobody could have anticipated anything, at least nothing jumps out at me that you could have anticipated, so, yeah, I'm in
Right.
favor of it.
And at the same time, I understand, you know, Pat, your argument that a deal's a
Yeah.
deal, and that's what we said we were gonna spend, period.
Yeah, well, I'm not presenting it as an argument, I'm trying to present it as a fact of how we authorized the spending.
Right.
There's no question there's gonna be additional things out there. In fact, that was part of the discussion when we authorized the amount we authorized the last time. We asked, what was there contingency in there, and Chad, sure as it was. Now, this is over and above that contingency.
Correct.
That's why I think we need to authorize funds over and above what we already authorized in the original MOU. It's not whether we
Would you
find
like to
things
take, would you like to make a motion to that effect? To, as a board, to authorize an additional $17,075.97 above our original agreement of $330,000,
Okay, well,
and that be reflected in a new MOU. And when signed, then we would transfer funds.
I'm okay making that
makes
motion,
sense.
but that doesn't account for additional things.
In the future.
I'll sit here and, that we're gonna find more things, yeah, so. So is that, if we do it that way, we just gonna keep revising the MOU, or are we putting
Well, it sounds like your choices are to, you're at 330, you'd be at 347. You know, do you want to bring it current to where you're at and say, we shall go no further? Or do you want to build in a cushion, you know, and decide amongst yourselves, okay, we're comfortable with, you know, 350, 360? That's up to you. I mean, the question is whether you want to memorialize where you're at right now, assuming that you want to pay this stuff, or whether you want to go a little bit further. That's a policy decision, I think. But if you're, keep in mind, if you're revising the MOU, you're going to have to go back to GMA and the borough. You can't unilaterally just do it yourselves.
Right.
well, GMA's getting more money charged too, right?
Yeah, they're spending another 14,000.
So the 330, just so everyone is clear, the 330 from the authority here and the 325 from GMA has already, the borough has already received those funds, and that's being used now to pay prior invoices to York Excavating.
Based on what Chad said, I would, and taking into consideration what you just said, Adam, I would tend to want to handle this as it comes. In other words, not extend another 25 or 30,000, which obviously we could, just, you know, just say 30,000, 10%. But I would rather you guys come to us, I'm looking at Chad, and say, we found this, this, and this, and then discuss it and either agree or not agree, okay? That's where I am.
I understand the argument about we'd have to keep going back for MOUs, but where we're at in this contract, I have to agree with Chad. You can find anything at any time in this town.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who thinks otherwise is living in a different world. But the last two phases to go really shouldn't involve anything. I mean, our grates are in, they're not gonna move. Tree boxes are about the last thing that we really even touch on in these two contracts. So I think it's a very, very low, you know, I just agree with what Chad's saying. It's a very low possibility that we're gonna get hit with another change order. Not saying we can't, because it is Gettysburg and you are digging, that's, but I think I'd be more comfortable with just the amount that's there. And then if something else comes up, then we discuss that, and if we have to adjust the MOU again, we have to adjust the MOU again. Or the borough's on the hook, one or the other.
Right. Good?
Yeah.
Okay,
As long
so,
as we're doing what we said we're gonna do.
right, and what we're gonna do is, sounds like we need to have a motion to extend the MOU on another, for the Stormwater Authority, $17,075.97, and you might as well put GMA in there too. And if everybody's in agreement, then we will pay that amount. Charles, you,
Chad, do you know when this invoice, when they're expecting this?
The motion is on the Borough Council's agenda tonight for approval of the change order, the total amount, the total 59,740, or 240 there.
right,
That item is on the Borough Council agenda for tonight, and the check could get cut with it whenever, I think, within the next month. I think our contract says within the
So,
next month, you gotta
Either
pay it.
way, we're going to pay this invoice prior to any
Right.
MOUs happening.
and we will
So the
reimburse.
question is, at what level is Gettysburg Borough going to be reimbursed by the two authorities?
Correct.
Exactly.
So if there is a new MOU, I think it should be tied specifically to this sheet and
I agree.
not to what's on the screen. I don't think we're amending this MOU. I think we're creating a new one specific to these charges.
They're changes. Okay. So, time for a motion. You want to try this?
Sure.
Karen, you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, but am I ready?
All right.
Well, I think, from what I'm understanding, if you're writing a new MOU, you're really authorizing staff to draft it, to memorialize these change orders and the financial responsibility of each of them, correct?
Correct.
That's your intention, okay.
Is the motion just a draft, or is it also to authorize the manager to sign?
Well, it's really Mike.
Or
isn't
Mike.
it? Or no, you signed for the borough,
I signed for the Stormwater Authority.
I'm on this one,
but for the borough.
or the borough, and then the authority, and
So
then,
that would authorize,
Okay. So I guess the motion would be to authorize the preparation of a MOU to reflect additional costs associated with Gettysburg Interloop Phase B2 to reflect, I forget what I said. Can you read that back?
Authorizing preparation of an MOU to reflect additional costs associated with the Gettysburg Interloop Phase B2.
As reflected on the York Excavating Company requests for change log document.
is there a date on this, Chad?
Yes, in the bottom right.
Yep.
4/14.
Dated
Today's.
4/14/25.
Dated 4/14/25, with costs to GBSWA not to exceed $17,075.97.
And you
And
need
for
to-
the chair to
Okay,
execute the
thank you.
same.
Okay, yes. Pat?
I was just gonna say, I'm not sure why we need a new MOU, because if you addend the other one, the whole story's there. Otherwise, you have this MAU that's hanging out there just for 17,000 of what, changed what, whereas.
I think it'll be, as long as it's tied to the Gill phase, B2B project, I don't think that that's an issue,
Okay.
because it'll be right there. Okay?
You want me to read it back?
Yep, please.
Motion authorizing preparation of a MOU to reflect additional costs associated with the Gettysburg Interloop Phase B2 as reflection on the York Excavating Company request for change log document dated May 14, 2025, with costs to GBSWA.
April 14th, actually.
Yeah, April 14th, not to exceed $17,075.97. And then there was something.
So I would say motion to authorize preparation and execution by the chair of blah.
Right.
Yes.
I am the chair of Block.
The chair of blah.
Okay,
It's not you.
there is the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay,
Who made the motion?
John,
John?
No, I
who seconded? You seconded it. I said there is the motion. So can I make the motion?
You can.
I'll make the motion,
Okay, Mike.
as written. Thank you. Thank you, John. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Not hearing any. It passes. Thank you very much. Got it. Next is rules, rates, and regulations. Deborah was going to lead us in this. There were some documents that she sent out. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them. I would feel more comfortable if she led us through this, actually. Go ahead. You were gonna say
So typically, we review these essentially annually, and then generally review them at a meeting and then adopt them. I think on a more macro level, we would probably be well advised to adopt these on an annual basis, maybe at the same time that we adopt our budget, going forward to say, this is our budget for next year, and these are the rules, rates, rules, and regs. I don't know that that's critical, but that's just something that occurred to me as I was getting ready for the meeting, that kind of an annual adoption, perhaps as part of your reorg meeting or right before it, would be a good logical time to do this each year, while continuing the model that we've done before, which is as we think of things and as we go through it and realize, well, that's not necessarily working out the way we want it to, have our running log, so we're not adopting things piecemeal, meeting by meeting.
I don't recall, yeah. And when do we do the budget, Charles, now, on the new cycle? That's it.
It'll coincide with the council adoption of their
Right.
budget. So the December of every year, you'll adopt the next fiscal year, starting January 1,
Okay,
once we get through this half-year billing.
right. And I think these RRRs reflect the half-year billing.
They do.
And so, I'm trying to think logically,
We would have.
on the website, it's going to be the old stuff, right?
So
The old rates, rules, and regulations. I'm just trying to think of, as a customer.
yeah, these will be posted as soon as you adopt them. We can turn that around fairly quickly.
Yeah, I think the goal was to approve these new, because I understand what Adam's saying, but I think the goal was to approve these new rates, rules, and regulations before the next billing
That's
cycle.
correct.
Right.
It is.
In July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. We have a
Yes.
meeting in June.
Well, next,
Haven't we discussed most of these changes already and looked at them before?
Yes, yes.
So
In a topical way, Kurt, in a topical way. I
This
don't
is the
know.
first time we've seen them all together.
Yeah.
I think we've dealt with each one separately, I think.
And usually by dealt with, it's when we revise these next time, we should address this, particular topic or this particular matter. And now she's gone through and wordsmithed them.
How does the authority feel about adopting these right now, even without Deborah? We have spoken about and discussed, I think, each one of them, timing and so forth. She's not here, however, the document is.
I've reviewed them, and they reflect, I think, what we've agreed upon. So I would be inclined to adopt them tonight.
Okay, okay. Any other comments, questions on that? John, Pat, you okay? John, okay?
So are you looking for a motion?
Yes, I am.
So I'll move that we adopt the rules, rates, and regulation amendments as presented.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on that? Okay.
Who's second?
Second?
We need a second.
Yep, I know.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Pat. Okay, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition, same sign. Not hearing any, thank you. It passes, thank you.
Now, do we want to make a motion to do a yearly review and coordinate it with the budget, since we've discussed that?
that's
Get
a
that
good
on the
idea.
books and-
Yep. Does everybody feel comfortable with that? And what month would that be?
Well, it would
I
have
think
to
we
either
should.
be
I think it would coincide exactly with your budget adoption process, so we'll start talking about it in August, go right through December, and then adopt it with your budget.
Okay. All right. So, John, you want to make that motion?
Make a motion that we do a review of the rules, rates, and regulations, along with the budget process, the yearly budget process, starting in 2025.
Okay,
I'll second that.
thank you. Any discussion on that? Not hearing any. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposition, thank you. It passes. Thanks, John. Good idea.
And Adam, I'll get this sort of.
Okay. Yep.
You can
Very good.
make sure.
Okay, we're at Stevens Run Channel Walls. No, this is not much. These must be dollars. No, the timeline, I guess.
So this is a pretty simple little spreadsheet here, but it'll help us to understand what we're up against when we're dealing with going after grants to get projects. So essentially what we're looking at is our Stevens Run project. We know it's somewhere in the $6 to $10 million range to fix all of these walls, right? It's a pretty daunting task whenever you only have $300,000 a year to put towards construction. So the only way we can do this is with a grant or with a loan. So one of the grant sources that are out there is the PA Flood Mitigation Grant. And it's coming up soon. It's the end of next month where the grant application will have to be submitted. So it had to be submitted, I believe, before our next Stormwater Authority meeting. So if we wanted to apply for that, they do allow you to apply in advance of ownership. One of the things that we were talking about was figuring out the ownership of some of these things. They actually can provide money towards land acquisition for these things. A lot of times whenever you're looking at PA flood mitigation grants, you're talking about like an area that's flooding, and what do you got to do to stop it from flooding? So maybe moving a house out of the floodway,
Right.
purchasing land to be able to get people out of a floodway, something like that. This is a little bit of a different scenario where we have an existing confined channel wall that we're trying to repair, but it is essentially a flood wall. So we did talk to folks from the DEP, and they agreed that this project fits within their criteria. So the next step is to determine if we want to apply for design or construction. Now, if we apply for design, this year, you don't get the money until next year. So you're starting the actual design the following year. You're not going to start construction then until some year out from there. You would have to reapply then for the construction dollars in hopes that you get construction dollars. It could end up being four years or more until you get to construction. So another option or another scenario is to use local funds to do the design, and only for the one project while you're applying for the grant application for the other project. So what this spreadsheet does is, first of all, let me talk about the priorities, and then I'll come back to how we would apply for the money. But the priorities are, these are the three main priorities that were on that really long spreadsheet. If you remember all of the channel walls, 90 different properties or something like that. And we identified these three areas as the priority areas where the walls are failing. And we have done a follow-up inspection, by the way, just to make sure that we were happy with these priority areas. We were actually, for a while, considering this item number 2 here, which is north of Water Street. That's behind like Stadler's Upholstery and the glass, Gettysburg Glass. We were looking at that one where it was rotating every year. We were getting a rotation. This last couple, it hasn't rotated. So we moved that down to priority number 2 because we're starting to realize that the wall between Carlisle Street and Gilliland Alley, that's the one between the old Ugly Mug and Late Night Bites, that wall is continuing to bulge.
And the bridge, right?
And the bridge right there in the Gilliland Alley Bridge.
Right.
And that wall as the one that just failed on the other side of that bridge a few years ago. So it makes sense that that's a high priority. And plus its location of where it is right in the center of town. If you look at behind Gettysburg Glass, if that fails, sure, it's not great, but that's not going to impact as many properties if that one fails as this one's going to impact. This is right kind of in the heart of the town. So we made that wall priority number 1, the Carlisle to Gilliland, and then the north of East Water Street to 4th Street is priority number 2. And then if the third priority is just sometime in the future, we just bump that one down. We think that that's going to be good to go at least for the next couple of years until we can figure out what we're going to do with these other 2. So again, if we're good with those priorities, waiting until we got grant money to start the design and then go to the construction for that first priority, the Carlisle to Gilliland, we're concerned about that, knowing that the reality is 4 years from now is when you're going to construction. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know when the wall's going to fail. It's going to fail at some point. Sooner you can get to it, the better, obviously, so you're not reacting. You're trying to be proactive. So this grant strategy has the design using the local funds, that's the Stormwater Authority funds, this year, and then we would apply for the construction funds next year. Once we have the design done, we know exactly what needs to be built, then we would apply for the construction funds and hopefully get those construction funds and do the construction in 2027. It basically moves that up a full year in your schedule. The other idea is you can apply for the design this year for that one and just wait for another year. So that's the kind of the 2 different strategies there. Either way, you can still apply for the design for the other one while you're doing the design funded in-house. For instance, if you funded the in-house priority number 1, we can start that design anytime. Then project number 2, you could still apply for design funds in this grant term. If you didn't want to wait till next year and only apply for construction funds for priority number 1, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I have a couple questions. The first one is, do you know what the total available grant funds are?
Yeah, right there in the header of this document, it's between 30 and 500,000.
No, do you know?
Oh, statewide.
Statewide.
I do not, I was thinking I heard that once upon a time, but I don't remember.
I'm just curious
Yeah.
because I don't know whether we're, competing for 5 million or 50 million. But anyway.
I don't know
Okay,
that
dollars-wise, what do you think the design would be if we started the design on that phase, on that portion?
I haven't run an estimate, but I think we just did the Bream Alley wall design for, I remember it's being around 40 or 50,000. The one we just did not too
Right.
long ago. And this one's maybe a little bit more complicated because there's going to be, you can't just replace this has 2 walls instead of 1, and underneath the side with the ugly mug, that's going to have to be those helical piles. You're not going to be able to just dig that one up because there's that 3-story building right beside it.
Yeah.
So that one's going to the goal is to maintain the wall on the north side, repoint it, do a chamfer where the foot is, and do the tiebacks on the north side. And then on the south side would be a complete replacement. And of course, there's a big ticket item with that Late Night Bites building. That building is right on that wall that's failing. And the only way that I know to do this right is to tear down that building. So there's some additional, Bream Alley maybe was not a good example because that one was pretty straightforward, right along the alley that we owned. So it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be more than Bream Alley.
Yeah,
But that's
I'll
just
say-
to give you an idea.
Ballpark, I'd say that's $100,000.
To design, yeah, I don't think it should get that high.
Well-
It's probably over 50, but it should be under 100.
Yeah, and then I guess the question is that a $400,000 construction project?
Yeah, that, and Bream Alley was close to 400,000, so yeah, I would expect it to be that. And one of the rule of thumbs is usually about 25% is soft costs, 75% is construction. So if you're looking at
Right.
400,000 and if the total grant amount is 400,000, I mean, it's 500,000, you're gonna get 100,000 for design.
Right, right. Okay, and the last question is, I know we talked at the Borough Council, we talked about identifying like 4 properties and using those as test cases, and now, I don't know where we are with any of that. I don't know if it's a legal issue, because we have, I think one of them is this property, isn't it? No, it's not. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But.
Yeah, these are the 4 tests that we were talking about. These are the ones.
Well, these are just 2 of the tests, because the other ones are somewhere else on the schedule, aren't they?
I believe so this comprised of like 6 properties, I think total, but there's two on that priority project number 1. There's 2 property owners there. And then with project number 2, there's maybe 2 or 3 property owners there. And then the last one is the Middle Street to Bream to Wolf Alley. That's probably 3 or 4 different property owners total. But those are kind of the test subjects that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I thought we identified 4, and 2 of them is in the Carlisle Gillen Alley,
Yes.
right?
Yep, and that's that project number 1
So are you
there.
suggesting we design for all 4? Or are you suggesting we just concentrate on the 2 for now, not the 4?
I would at least get the first 2 done, and then the second 2 can be follow-up. Because it's going to be a different wall there behind.
Yeah,
right. Right, it's slightly different dynamics.
Okay. Board members, I'll be quiet and let.
Okay.
let you-
Well, I have a question. If we don't, have you considered delaying the project until we get the grant money as opposed to using internal funds? I mean, what's the risk that we would assume by doing that?
Delaying the design or the construction?
Well, till you get the grant, whatever. Both of them are grants, right?
Yep.
And one of them, you're proposing using internal funds for the design, because we may not get the grant. I'm suggesting that we slide the project back and use the grant funds rather
No.
than internal funds.
So I guess my suggestion to start with the design this year was because you save a year while you're waiting on grant funds. And we can certainly wait if you would just like to apply for the design this year and wait for just you can't apply for construction until you have a design done. It needs to be shovel ready. So you can't even apply for, if you waited till you got grant funds, you would basically be applying for the grants this year. At very best, you would start the design next year. Then the following year, you could apply for construction. The year after that, you could go to construction.
Yeah, so the choice would be start early using our own funds, or wait till we get a grant and
Right.
wait a year.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
So
And-
I'm just throwing it out for
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah. And can we reimburse ourselves?
I don't believe so. There's a grant authorization date, and you can't use the grant funds until after that time.
So we would use our own funds of, well, I'm just saying, round figures, $100,000, hopefully not that much. And then we would have $500,000 to use on the project if we got it.
If we got 500.
Right, if we got, yeah,
Right.
on any amount.
Yeah, and I guess if you would use your own funds to start the design on project number 1, the way this spreadsheet says is we could still apply for design funds for project number 2, and we would wait on that one. That one would get pushed back, that 4-year time frame versus the 3-year time frame for project number 1. So those could be happening on paralleling paths, not paralleling, but leapfrogging paths.
Right. And this wouldn't prevent us from applying for any other grants, would it?
No, I don't think so.
I mean,
no.
if the Army Corps of Engineer had a grant program.
And we've been talking to our friends at COSN, who is looking into that. We had another meeting just 2 weeks ago with representatives from Fetterman's office, who was talking to us about that. Of course, their whole world is a little bit upside down
yeah,
right now, so
everything's
we're kind of on hold with that, but they had proposed some potential funding sources through Army Corps. And yes, if there was anything else that came up, we should still apply, because there's no guarantee on any of this.
Okay. Questions?
So we need a design for any, whether it's federal money or Commonwealth money, we have to have a design before we can apply for any construction. Is that accurate?
That would be my understanding, yes. I'm sure that with this, the PA flood mitigation grant, which is Commonwealth, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same thing with Army Corps. You either apply for the design, or you have a design in place, and then you can apply for the construction. And that's consistent, like if you look at our Gateway Connectivity Project, we have the funds for only the design.
So, just to throw this out, you being C.S. Davidson could give us an estimate.
Yes, yep.
A little closer to my throwing out,
Yep.
6 figures. Would the board be interested in that, and C.S. Davidson giving us an estimate for the Carlisle to Gilland Alley, both design and construction, knowing that construction's going to be a year or 2 out? And then we would have more information to work with for the next meeting. Hold it. We have to apply? I don't know.
Yes,
That's a
so-
good
We
question.
talked about budgets for this before, right?
Yeah, there's been
We have a budget figure.
some discussions on budgets on these things, yeah. But to keep,
Conceptual.
yeah, it was a really high level budgets between that $6 and $10 million. It was not boiled down.
So what's the timing for the grant application? You said that
Yeah,
first of all.
by the end of next month, I believe. So I think really the only thing that I need to know today, I don't need to be authorized for the design today. I just need to know if you like this general outline, because that would suggest that we are going to apply, that means you were going to use in-house funds to do the design for phase 1, which is the priority. Project number 2 would apply for the design funds, and we would just wait on that.
I'm afraid by doing nothing and just waiting until that we don't have flexibility. I mean, I know spending money is not the first thing that I want to do, but we need a design anyway, at some point.
Who prepares the grant applications? Is it you on behalf of the borough?
Correct, yes. Yep, we have a
We have an
grant
in-house.
writer. C.S. Davidson has a grant writer. Usually the grant applications, something like this, are around a $2,500 grant application. We're not looking at something like Raise or something like that where you're looking at $20,000. This is a fairly straightforward, small one. Now, I will say the only concern that I have about applying for the design for project number 2 is then, let's just say we were lucky and we got the design funds funded. A lot of times then what the Commonwealth will want to do is pay for the construction of what they just paid for the design of. So it almost puts that then as the priority for construction. You see what I'm saying? Versus just waiting another year to apply for the construction of project number 1 and keeping that one be the priority. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
So what you're saying is, don't apply for the design right away, wait to the next year, is what you're saying?
And to just apply for the construction of the priority project number 1.
Right.
And that's just because, again, I don't know that that's the case. I don't know that you can't get the design funds for project 2 and then the following year apply for the construction of project number 1.
But your grant writer might have an idea of what's
Yeah.
going on with that.
Sometimes, whenever the state is in it for the design, that's been an argument that we've used a lot of times that, hey, you've already paid for the design, now give us some money for the construction so you didn't waste your money, right? So they might say, well, hey, we gave you some money for this project number 2, we're going to give you the money for the construction now for that project, which is going to make project number 1 then sit in the back burner. So that's the only trade-off there is, it's just throwing out the option. I don't know exactly how that would work. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know if that would be a real concern or not. It's just something I want to throw out to you.
So am I hearing that if they fund the design, the state funds the design, there's more likelihood of funding the construction of that type of project than a privately designed project? Is that fair to say or not?
No, I don't know if I would say it like that. I don't know that they care that they paid for the design versus a private pay for design. I just think it's more about the fact that they're already in. They've already committed public dollars to a project. They want to see it through to construction.
I think the argument is this is very important to us. We're using our own money to design this. I mean, that ought to be part of the grant application, and that's why we're going this route instead of waiting and waiting, because there's urgency here.
And I don't know that this should matter, if it does matter or not, but I will say that the project number 1, we do know that property there has been land development plans submitted over the past years. We just saw it in the newspaper. There's been a hard application, so we know there's the property owner there is wanting to do something with that property. So we would like to be in line with the property owner's schedule there. So that was another reason why we opted to make that a higher priority.
So as a board, are we comfortable in telling C.S. Davidson to sharpen their pencil and come up with estimates for design and construction for that segment?
For project 1?
For project 1.
But I think we should still apply for the design grant funds for project 2 also.
I don't have a problem with that. I think we take our chances and see what we get.
Well, what I threw out on the table was delay the whole thing and put in a grant for project 1. Because I'm not sure we can demonstrate urgency, since it's been that way for decades.
No, it hasn't. It's gotten worse. I mean, that's the point of the first, of this leg of the walls. I mean, and you guys have the engineering studies to prove it, right?
Yeah, we've been doing inspections on it, so we can provide our inspection reports where it show the increased bulging. We can show that the exact same age of wall just failed a few years ago. So I think we could probably, demonstrate urgency, to your point there, Pat.
The worst is the first.
No, I think before we use our own funds rather than grant funds, we ought to have the urgency documented.
Well, I think the urgency is
That's
documented. I think that's part of the grant application.
Yeah, sure. But that's the only rationale I can see for using our own money versus waiting for grant money.
The urgency.
Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly right. That's why this number one project is in the batter's box. So do you want some, I mean, I don't know if we need anything separate, you
I
can.
just want to make sure that the minutes show that we considered it.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, yeah, because it's an option and it should be considered.
Okay. Well, that can still be considered as well as you guys giving us information,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
That information being what's the design cost and the construction cost, and not mutually exclusive. They can be done at the same time, and you can also give us an idea of the rotation or whatever engineering terms we're using
Yep.
to verify the urgency of the project. Okay? Any other, comments, please?
The grant applications were okay until we get your estimates that we don't have to make this decision until the June meeting, correct?
No, we would need to submit the grant application before the end of the next month, end of May. So you aren't going to have another meeting until after the grant application is due.
Which grant was that?
This
This
PA
one.
flood
Design.
mitigation
This-
grant that this
The
sheet's showing.
Design or construction?
Design.
Design, yeah, we don't have any design done, so we can't apply for construction right now.
Right.
So you're only applying for the design of one of those two projects. So if you,
So we would be applying for the design of project number 2.
All right.
knowing that we can wait
Oh,
for
I
another year
understand.
for that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Actual application.
And if we get that grant, how long do we have to spend it?
That, usually believe you have like 3 or 4 years. That should not be an issue.
Okay.
Because we should be able to get that design done in 6 to 12 months. The design will take less than 6. It'll be the permitting thing that will take closer to a year, but there should be no reason why we can't get it. The thing that I would be concerned about is sometimes we get authorization that we have the grant, and until you get through the grant agreement process, that could take, sometimes that can take quite a while.
Right.
Charles and I just worked on one that took almost 4 years, just to get the agreement. But that's just to authorize the money, and then you can start the design.
Oh.
And how much is the design for the first phase going to be in ballpark?
That's what we're thinking. It's going to be in the $50,000 to $100,000. I'll get you some specific estimates, but
Right.
both of those phases, I would say, are in that same ballpark, by the way.
So we're comfortable in having him move ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I would suggest we move to authorize C.S. Davidson to give us an estimate for the Project 1 design costs that we would do in-house, and move ahead on applying for the grant design funds for Project 2.
Yes.
And documentation of why we need to do it now.
And documentation of the
Yeah,
urgency.
that's-
Right. Got a motion?
Sounded like it.
I will move that. Yes.
Karen?
So
Okay.
you're authorizing C.S. Davidson to perform,
Give us an estimate on the design costs for Project 1
okay, the design cost for Project 1
and,
to apply for the.
and
grant
apply for the grant for design funds for Project 2.
For Project 2, and
And
then with
construction
that,
estimate for
you said,
project 1?
Yes.
provided pending the urgency. is-
No, they also, as part of that submission, submit the document of why we can't wait for a year for the
Let's,
grant.
go ahead.
I don't know that you need to have that be part of the motion if there's an understanding. That's my opinion.
Okay.
So could you read that back, Karen, please?
Do you want to get the construction in there too? the estimate for the design
Design
and construction
yeah,
Project one.
for
for
project one.
So authorize C.S. Davidson to provide an estimate of the design costs and construction costs for Project 1, and to move to apply for the grant money for Project number 2.
Design.
Design grant.
Okay, design grant for Project number 2. And you'll clean that up, right?
I will try. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good, Karen.
And as far as, I mean, I don't have any problem adding and then a sentence that says something to the effect that, and demonstrating, sorry, Counselor, that the urgency of
Both-
each project.
Okay.
How's that?
Supplying documentation demonstrating the urgency for each project?
Right. You're good with that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be part of the grant anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'll second that.
I'll make the motion. You're seconding.
I made the
Oh, you
motion.
made the motion, sorry. See, I'm all excited. Any other comments, questions? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any, any opposition?
Kurt's
Good,
really.
it passes. Thank you, Kurt.
Oh, my God.
It's not a
Okay.
voice vote. It's okay.
Yeah. Chad?
Yeah, and before I move on to the next item on the agenda here, just one other brief thing about Stevens Run is the council did authorize us to start pursuing those right-of-way ownership discussions with the property owners. So first thing for us was to come up with the priorities, do our final inspection. So we'll be starting to reach out to those property owners and get them engaged on behalf of the council with the solicitor for the Borough Council. So just wanted to note
Just so everyone
that.
knows, we do not own anything.
Right.
Right. No, but I would hope that there's going to be a process, I'm looking at both the counselor and Chad, about how to approach and what the steps are in this process.
Yeah, I think nuance is key there.
Right. Right.
Yeah, the first steps are the pull the deeds and
Right.
see what the deeds say.
Yes.
Do some research.
There's a legal
Yeah.
research side to this.
And then the next step
It goes
is
down to surveying. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah,
it's,
exactly.
The next step would be reaching out to the property owners and having a meeting with the property owners so that they understand where we are. We would have to do a survey, we have to find property corners,
Right.
those kind of things. And then we can start coming up with, and part of this is there's a chicken and egg with doing the design, because we can't determine ultimately what right-of-way we would need until some of the design's done. So first step is really to understand what exists.
Right.
Who owns what, where the property corners are, those kind of things.
and those four properties are the
On
ones that are
those
up.
priorities
Right.
that are
That we
associated with those
discussed the
projects.
borough. Okay. Borough Council, okay. You want to talk about the stream restoration motion?
Yeah, so this is the same thing as years past. In your packets were the new cost estimate from Land Studies. I don't have that in front of me here. I can pull it up if you need it, but.
On the screen.
There we go, perfect. And every year for 5 years, we need to do maintenance to our Culps Run Stream Restoration Project, where Land Studies goes in, they spray the invasives, fix some erosion areas, and that's part of our permit requirement. We got to do that every year for 5 years. This will be year number 3. So after this year, we'll still have 2 more years that we have to do this. So we have one of the things that the council or that the board wanted 2 years ago when we started this was they wanted to authorize it on 1-year periods. So we're back to another year. Spring's coming. It's time to start spraying the invasive species.
Correct.
And
And
then, at the end of 5 years, Park Service takes that over?
Then the Park Service is planning on taking it over. That's the indication that I understand. And we just, Mike and I actually just did a presentation on Thursday last week when it was raining and
the
cold,
rain.
and it was pretty miserable. We were staying out there for about 3 hours with a bunch of landscape architects, and National Park Service, Zach Belitho was there from the National Park Service, and he indicated the same, that he was appreciated that we were still on the hook with this permit that we were on the hook with, because it helps to defer his requirements to be doing this maintenance. But he is aware that he's going to have to start picking up this maintenance once we're done and off the hook of our permit.
Right.
How much of an increment does this contract reflect over last year's price, if any?
It was an increase. I'm going to say, if I can remember, it was like $700 or something like that.
I'm gonna say $1,000.
Maybe close to 1,000, yeah. I didn't do the exact math, but it was a little bit of an increase from last year.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think these are still, there's some of these line items include certain erosion control measures only if they have to do it.
Correct.
That's another thing. So they haven't used their full contract in the past years. And the longer we go and the more mature the vegetation gets, the less likely that they're going to have to go out there and do some, they put some things in there just in case you get a flash flood. A 50-year storm comes through and they've got to go out there and do some serious maintenance. We haven't really had to do some of those things, so fingers crossed.
Most of that is trying to eradicate invasives. That's the big thing. Okay. There's a motion on the table, a motion to authorize land studies to perform annual maintenance on the Culps Run Stream Restoration Project, consistent with the Culps Run Maintenance and Monitoring 2025 contract in the amount of $16,050.
If that's a motion, I will second it.
Okay. Well, I made it. You second it. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Not hearing anything to the opposition? It passes. Thank you. New business, there is no new business. Any other comments or anything from the board? Okay. I will,
Mr. Moon here from the public.
we have public, anything from the public? Nothing? It's his turn next. Not hearing any, I'll accept the motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're done. Thank you very much. See you in June.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order this meeting. This is the business meeting for the Gettysburg Borough Council for Monday, April 14th, 2025. If you would all mind, please rising, we will take a moment of silence and the pledge. Pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I've been counting all day. I got scared there. All right. An executive session was conducted by the Borough Council of the Borough of Gettysburg immediately following the adjournment of its monthly general business meeting held on March 10th, 2025, consistent with Sections 708A1 and Section 708A5 of the Sunshine Act. An executive session will be conducted by the Borough Council immediately following the adjournment of tonight's monthly general business meeting, consistent with Section 708A1 and Section 708A5 of the Sunshine Act for the following purposes. 1, to provide information and to discuss matters involving the employment, the terms and conditions of employment, and the evaluation and discussion of performance of current borough employees. And 2, to review and discuss matters of borough business which, if conducted in public, could lead to the disclosure of information or matters of confidentiality protected by law. I would also like to announce a couple of upcoming public forum. The public is invited to participate in 2 public forums to discuss design concepts for the Gettysburg Gateway Connectivity Project. Both public forums are set to begin at 6:30 p.m. in council chambers at the Gettysburg Municipal Borough Building, 59 East High Street, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The first will be Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025, and the second will be Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. You don't need to attend both, but you certainly can, and both will be opportunities for you to give suggestions for different aspects of this project. All right, that's going to take us to the agenda and minutes for tonight's meeting. Would anybody care to make a motion to approve the April 14th, 2025 agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Would anybody care to make a motion to approve minutes of the council business meeting of March 10th, 2025, public hearing minutes and council work session minutes, both held on March 24th, 2025, as presented?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, corrections, omissions, errors? All those in favor of those approvals, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. That's going to take us to our first public comment section for the evening. This first section is restricted to items appearing on tonight's agenda. We ask that you use the podium. Please limit yourself to 5 minutes, and we need you to state your name and address of residence. Is there any public comment? Sir.
Good evening, Dave Petters, 13 Lincoln Square, Gettysburg, and I'm also on the ballot to hopefully earn a position with you fellow members who I really appreciate the work you continue to do for this town. I saw on the agenda there were 2 interesting things I'm hoping to hear more about tonight. One of them is the parking department plan to develop a plan for discounting parking in the garage to promote conferences, which I think is a noble idea. I think I talked about this before. I hope it doesn't get so complicated that we're ignoring opportunities to broaden the scope of that. I was just in Rehoboth Beach just past weekend. Their parking meters are still bagged at this time of the year. I think that'd be a good goal for this town to try to work towards from December at least through March. It's going to be difficult to figure out how to make that happen, but I think there's opportunities there. And it would ease the administration of whatever plan you come up with. to be able to do permitting for X number of members of a conference, whereas if there was no parking charge, then the greater community could take advantage of that and bring shopping opportunities into town. One possibility is maybe on future hires in the parking division, look at hiring them on as seasonal employees and not employing them year-round. The next part, I was very interested in hearing more about the security surveillance cameras on the square. Really, I question, for use in certain areas of the square, does that mean what part of the square is going to be under surveillance and what isn't? And what prompted this change in policy? And why was the square picked versus, say, another part of town that might be equally busy? I think it's a worthwhile thing, but I'd just like to hear more about it. And thank you for your time again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment tonight? All right, I don't see any, so we'll move on. We will start tonight with Mr. Whitmore in the Planning Department.
Good evening. A copy of the report was provided electronically. Nothing much to report at this time. We are still going through the process of updating the zoning ordinance with the Planning Commission. Staff will be presenting a few map options at the next meeting scheduled for Monday, the 21st. With that meeting, we do anticipate having the availability of a resolution to be able to progress that to council action. Once council has that document, there is a process established by the municipality's planning code to provide for public hearing in a, I guess, a specific sequence of events. Other than that, the Planning Commission was able to approve the subdivision land development plan associated with a larger development that's actually in Strabon Township. But we will be having the agenda items for the Planning Commission completed later this week.
I'm sorry, can you restate, please, for me what will be voted on and sent to council by the Planning Commission?
The goal is to have the resolution for approval of the rezoning in some form that the Planning Commission is acceptable with. We will be providing a staff report indicating all the changes that have been made from the existing document to the steering committee's draft document, the working group's draft document, to the final draft that we are upon with the Planning Commission.
All right. For everybody's benefit here, I want to talk a little bit about the timetable for the rezoning. This has been something we have been working on since early 2022. We allocated funds in order to have a consultant, Michael Baker International, draft a new zoning ordinance for us. That consultant met with a select working group of government employees here, a member of council who is myself, members of the Planning Commission, representatives of the local business community, and that working group spent 10 months working on the draft that was eventually sent to the Planning Commission. I think our intent, as it was communicated to the Planning Commission, is that they would spend 3 to 6 months reviewing the prepared ordinance. They have now had it for, it will be a year next month. We will have a considerable task ahead of us comparing what the consultant prepared for us and what the Planning Commission will recommend done with it, but ultimately it will be council that writes that ordinance. This is one of the legislative priorities we set for this year. The intent is that we will spend probably most of the summer discussing this. It would be ideal if we are finalizing our changes to the document and getting that to the solicitor for preparation sort of concurrent with us starting budget considerations for next year, though that may not be possible. But that is the goal we're working towards. in a perfect world, we would even be voting on this ordinance this year, but I don't know if we're going to get there. So thank you for whatever efforts you have expended to help bring this to conclusion in the Planning Commission. They've had it considerably longer than I think anybody reasonably expected them to, and we would really like to move forward on this. I think one way or the other, we'll probably be discussing this at our May workshop. So should the Planning Commission find that they are not able to complete this and send it to resolution, they are authorized to set as many additional meetings as necessary to get this done so that we can begin discussing it at our May workshop. If you could communicate that to them, I'd appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Whitmore? All right. So we do have a motion here on the agenda for his department. Would anybody care to make that?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 041425-1, approving as the receiving municipality the request of Gateway Mini Mart USA Incorporated for an intended intermunicipal transfer of a restaurant liquor license, license number R-21262, LID number 129742, from previously approved licensed premises located at 985 Baltimore Pike, Gettysburg, and Cumberland Township to the proposed licensed premises located within the borough of Gettysburg at 517 Baltimore Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Any last-minute questions for Mr. Whitmore? Thank you, sir. That takes us to Deb English with Historic and Environmental Preservation.
Deborah is out this evening.
I suppose I could have looked past Charles in saying that.
A copy of the report in the form of the previous HARB agenda was provided. Motion on tonight's agenda involves an accessory structure at 615 York Street. That's the Schmuck Lumber Company former structure, but now it's being utilized as a hardware store. This would be an accessory to that use.
All right. Anybody have any questions on the HARB report? All right. Would anybody care to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation of the Borough of Gettysburg Historic Architectural Review Board, HARB, following its review during a meeting held on March 19th, 2025, and to approve the grant of a certificate of appropriateness for the following application as presented: COA-250011, Major Project 615 York Street, Schmuck Lumber Company, Inc., for the installation of a standalone greenhouse as presented in the application scope dated February 25th, 2025. This action is taken in consideration of the review of factors and criteria and the findings made thereon by HARB as set forth in its March 19th, 2025 meeting minutes, and the same are hereby adopted by Borough Council.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you again, Mr. Whitmore. All right, that takes us to the Parking Department. Becca Fissel.
Thank you.
Good evening. You should have my report. It has my comparisons for tickets and permits in there as usual. I also have the pay by phone from the comparison from March of last year to this year, which has gone up. That could be from more people using the app, or it could be from the raise of the meter rates as well. And then I do have the LPPs purchased for March were 29 and the quarterlies were 21. And previously the max, the highest number that we had on LPPs was 47. So the quarterlies have been popular as well, an option. And 10 people reserved parking spaces in the parking garage for March. That has gone up since April now that some businesses were closed over the winter and things. And then I did notice that my 2025 got cut off on the last page of my report, so I will have to get you those numbers
Yeah,
on the
that's what I
charts.
said. All right, any questions for Ms. Fissel? All right. So we do have a motion there. Would anybody care to read that?
I'll make a motion to authorize the development of a 90-day pilot program pursuant to Section 15-105 of the Code of Ordinances of the Borough of Gettysburg, with proposed experimental parking regulations, provisions, pricing, and use of the Gettysburg Borough Parking Garage for the competitive marketing of conferences by borough hotels and related businesses during normally low tourism time periods from December 15th, 2025 through March 15th, 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Would it be useful to give a
Yeah, a little
on
background, please.
where this is coming from per Mr. Petter's question and public comment?
Certainly.
In mid-January, Gettysburg Hotel hosted it's a Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, is that right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission hosted, that brought their annual conference to Gettysburg. After that conference concluded, the organizers of the conference approached the Gettysburg Hotel and said they would very much like to continue doing their conferences here in Gettysburg. But in the world of conference planning, the competition is fierce. And the organizers were looking for an accommodation to sweeten the pot, if you will, to bring their business to Gettysburg. Other conference hotels that are out in suburbs have sprawling parking lots where parking is free for the conferees. Obviously, we're an urban center here and do not have sprawling parking lots accessibly available to the public. So the Gettysburg Hotel approached the borough and asked if there's an accommodation that could be made to help them retain that business. Thus, this pilot program. And Becca, do you know if they were successful in retaining that business? Have you heard back from the hotel on that by any chance?
As of last I heard, not yet.
Okay. So this is a concept that we hope will sweeten the pot, if you will, in our slowest months for tourism here in Gettysburg and help our businesses continue to thrive in those traditionally slower months.
All right. And a little more background there, too. Parking revenues represent almost a quarter of all of our revenues. Even during our slow months, we're generally pulling in tens of thousands of dollars a month. So I don't know how we would get to a months-long reprieve on those fees without significantly raising property taxes. That's just to address the suggestion that had been made in public comment. I personally am supportive of this pilot program. This is something we would try for 90 days in the next calendar year, going into the next calendar year, as an opportunity to give local businesses a tool to bring even more business to us during our slowest months, especially on the slowest days of the week. I think this is an important thing for us to try. The pilot program planning structure allows us to try new things on a temporary basis and see if they are practicable for the borough and whether it's something we want to pursue with any sort of permanence. So I think this is probably a good thing for us to try. Is there any other discussion or comment?
I'm sorry, Ms. Lawson, just to follow up on Mr. Moon's comment about parking revenue. During the public comment, I thought I'd pull this graph up. I track this every month. So just in the month of January 2025, the borough received just under $118,000 in parking revenue. and in the month of February, just under $100,000. So just in those 2 months, the better part of $218,000 would be the hole that the borough would have to figure out how to fill should parking be free during those months.
That is correct. All right, is there any other discussion?
I was just going to comment that this is such a, I mean, it's an interesting opportunity, and it's an interesting conundrum, too, because while we want to attract businesses to the borough, we also don't want the burden of the lack of this revenue from parking to fall on the taxpayers. We do know that all of us are borough residents, and we know how high the taxes are in the borough compared to other municipalities in the county. And so when we can, we try to transfer some of that revenue gain we would get on visitors. I'd be interested, but I am going to support this pilot program because I think we should try it. But I'd be interested in knowing what other small tourist communities like Annapolis, Maryland, for example, how they fare, and do they do something similar, Ms. Fissel? I'd be interested in if you could maybe look into that. Annapolis is the first one to come to mind. There may be others. Lancaster is a little bit bigger. I know in Annapolis, when they have, and I've been down there for conferences, they use the hotel, but they also use the historic inns in Annapolis and B&Bs as well, but they all use the same municipal lot. Like, we would encourage those coming to Gettysburg for a big conference, perhaps at the hotel, but the beds might be not just the hotel, but also, some Bradford Inn and the other B&Bs in the downtown. So it would be good to have that information as well for us to compare. So, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Does this need to be, so it says like regulations, provisions, pricing, it just doesn't spell out like what is the cap, like you have to hit for your conference to be part of this program, or?
So we did discuss those criteria during the workshop last month. Becca, do you have the proposed numbers in front of you for what I think it was, we were looking for conferences of at least 100 attendees, Monday through Thursday.
Correct.
And it would be half of whatever we set the fee at for the daily rate in the parking garage?
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, right now, it's $18 a day for the daily rate. If we chose to raise that in the next calendar year with our fee resolution, we could, and then this rate would still be half of that daily rate.
I would also anticipate that with this action, this will allow council and staff administration to put together a program which will be subsequently adopted by council by resolution that will set forth the parameters, the precise parameters before this would go into effect. So you're not, the program is not fully set right now to be implemented, but this is the let us say, the triggering point to get it moving forward.
Okay.
Did you have specific concerns you'd like to see addressed with it?
No, I just wanted to make sure, just because I'm not seeing them here, that they were being covered somewhere. But no, I'm definitely for it. I want us to be as competitive as possible in these marketplaces. And I just want to also make sure that someone is reaching out, if this should pass, to those different venues in Gettysburg to make sure that they're also aware of it. Because there are people who just, won't know about it and then can't use this to market their businesses in the coming year.
Oh, no, we definitely have an opportunity to work with tourism agencies to try to publicize that this tool exists, should we move forward with it. All right. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Let's get to work. I love it. Any questions for Ms. Fissel before we move on? All right. Thank you, ma'am. That's going to take us to Public Works. Mr. Harbaugh.
Good evening. Hopefully you all got a chance to look at my report. Couple highlights in my report. The Garden Club project. The topsoil has been replaced due to an invasive weed infestation in the soil. So their contractor removed the soil. It is now in place, and they're planning on putting mulch over top of that soil till they plant in sometime in May. They're going to do that mulching tomorrow. The Shade Tree Commission is proposing and finalized plans for a planting project out at the rec park in memory of Jane Scott, who was the chair for the Shade Tree Commission for numerous years. So that planning is going to start in about the second week of May. And we're doing agility projects. Street sweeping is one of them. We do have an agility project with Strabane Township at the end of the month and first week in May. But we're trying to wrap up the street sweeping project along with our streets in town here. That's all I have.
Great. All right, any questions for Mr. Harbaugh? All right, we do have a motion there.
I can talk about that if you'd like.
Yeah, let's talk about the big blank space. in
Okay,
that motion.
so we have advertised a heavy equipment and vehicle contract for rental. The C.S. Davison was the only bidder that bid on it. Or, sorry, C.E. Williams and Sons Incorporated was the only bidder that bid on it. So they were awarded the bid today.
Okay. Do we know so we would just put in C.E. Williams?
Yes.
All right. Would anybody care to make that motion with the name C.E. Williams in the blank?
I'll make a motion to award a contract to C.E. Williams as the lowest qualified, responsible, and responsive bidder for the rental of heavy construction vehicles and equipment as set forth in the borough's specifications and instructions to bidders.
Is there a second?
Second. Oh.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Could you just tell us a little bit about what these needs are as far as the heavy equipment? Is this obviously heavy equipment we don't have?
It is. It's equipment that we don't have, and it's also equipment that our agility program does not have. It may be like a heavy traco, a paver, a blacktop paver, which we use that for paving in the summer. We also do this for if we have to haul snow. We have an equipment contract that they are bound to have us trucks in a certain amount of time to haul snow. So that would be the vehicle.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion will carry. Any questions for Robbie before we move on? Great. Thank you, sir. And that takes us to Mr. Claybaugh.
Good evening, council. You should have a copy of my written report. Did provide you with, half a dozen updates on my 6-page report. So we have a lot of things going on, but I'm going to just focus my attention tonight on the motions that are on the agenda for the Gettysburg Inner Loop Phase B2 project. There's 3 motions, all associated with the first of the 3 phases of that project. So just as a quick reminder, the first of those 3 phases was to install a new storm drain and move the water line. Included the boring under the railroad tracks for those things. We've been under construction on that project now for about 6 months, and it is complete. So these motions are essentially part of the contract finalization of that project. So just to kind of tee up the motions, I'll say that there was a lot of bid items with this thing. There's over 70 rows on the spreadsheet that I've been tracking. I think 29 or 30 columns on this spreadsheet. So it's pretty daunting through 7 application for payments and all of these change orders we've been doing. And in that process, I gave you the wrong number at your meeting last month. So the first motion on your agenda is to override the application for payment, the motion that you made last month. I would have corrected that with AFP 7 anyways, but I was able to catch it before Tammy cut the check. So the easiest thing to do was just to correct that with a new motion. That one is for standard bid items within the contract. Nothing has changed with that. The second motion is for additional line items, and the change order is for many things that I put a spreadsheet at your place called York Excavating Company Request for Change Log. So you can see all those line items and how they add up to that $59,240.43 amount. Of course, with this project, there was 3 kind of entities with this project. Gettysburg Municipal Authority was involved, the borough, and the Stormwater Authority. So in the right 3 columns of that log that I gave you, we tried to do the best we could to go through all of these line items and divvy up the responsibility so that the borough wouldn't be on the hook for this whole thing. Essentially, GMA would share in some of these expenses that were associated with water. Stormwater would do the same for stormwater-related things. You'll see that there's numbers in all 3 of those columns, and that's just whenever there was a line item that the contractor was working on both of those 2 things at the same time, and it was hard to break it down exactly, so we just sometimes divided it by 2 or divided by 3. I did go over this with Mark Geist from the Municipal Authority. He provided some comments, made some changes. We had a lengthy discussion at the Stormwater Authority meeting about an hour ago with this. So the Stormwater Authority did recommend approval of their $17,000 contribution. Of course, Mark's going to be taking this to his board as well to get their approval of their $14,000 contribution towards all the changes. And I'll also say that there was, I don't know, 4 or 5 other ones too that we have previously negotiated with York Excavating that we didn't think they should be approved. So I've already did a lot of work with this, gotten them to chop down maybe $10,000 or so down to this amount. So again, the borough would essentially be on the hook for $27,965.25 out of this change order, which is kind of a lot of money, but out of a $1.1 million project, and considering all of the things that we hit under that road as we were digging every day, it seemed like there was something new that we were hitting. I feel like it isn't a super big change from what we were anticipating. So I do have that for you for approval. And then finally is the final payment, number 7, which does reflect that change order. If these motions would have to get approved in this fashion, in this order, without approval of change order number 5, then we would have to table payment number 7. But that $250,000 does pay them for all of the rest of the contract items, and then in addition, it includes this $59,000 change order, as well as we still haven't paid them for all of change order number 2, which was the sidewalks that you authorized a while back that were down by the bridge on the right side there. So they have finished those sidewalks at this point. We need to finish paying them for that. So the rest of the contract came to within $500 and some of their contract amount. So I'm not going to dwell on those details. I'll spare you those details tonight. Really, the big ticket item is the items that are on this change log. In your packets also, where it was a, I don't know, 40-some page document with all of the documentation. Every single time we had one of these changes that we were hitting, we were having the contractor document it. The number of hours was signed off by my inspector. It's one of those things where they've got they have a shop, in a shop vac, a vac truck sitting there that we're paying $310 an hour for. We can't hold them up during that. We need them to keep moving. We document the time that they're spending that's changed, that's outside of the contract, and we're keeping them moving. So all of that documentation's in there and supporting this change order. So you do have my recommendation for approval, and that's how that would all work. I would say that there's one other thing that would go with that. The Stormwater Authority would like the MOU to be revised. There is a memorandum of understanding between the borough, the Stormwater Authority, and the Municipal Authority to for their shares of this project. I'll remind you that the Stormwater Authority's original contribution was for $330,000 and GMA's was for $325,000. So this essentially would change their contributions towards the project if their associated bodies would agree to it. Again, Stormwater Authority's body did agree to that, so essentially that would change that MOU. But we would need to essentially sign a new memorandum of understanding with those two entities. Should GMA's board not approve their portion of this, then that would fall back onto the borough. But from my discussions with Mark, I feel like we're at a good place where he understands and he has agreed to essentially these things. He has to, again, have to get that approval from his board ultimately, so. So there was kind of a lot there to unpackage. I think that's all I have for now. I'll turn it over to you for the motions.
All right, thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions for him before we get into the motions?
I had one question. I'm just curious on the change log that you submitted. What is meant by live unknown copper service, like at Delop Alley? What does that mean? Live unknown copper service?
Yeah, there was a live service, a water line that had water in it. I mean, it's live, and they didn't know where it went. So they're trying to figure out how to figure out if this was actually needed to be alive. It didn't, ultimately, that one. They were able to abandon it, but that's what they mean. A copper service is a copper water line, probably a 3/4 inch water line that just runs from the water main into your house. Okay. And it was live because it had water in it. A lot of times we hit a copper service that was not, we didn't know it was going to be there, and it's just an old abandoned one. So you just dig through it and you keep moving on. But whenever it's spewing water out, then that changes things a little bit.
Okay, thank you. I walk that way a lot, and it was a massive undertaking. Kind of reminded me of our version of the Big Dig in Boston when I looked in the massive holes. So, and I would just hope that you'll convey to the Stormwater and GMA, thank you for being good partners with the borough on this project, because it was complicated. Thanks, Chad.
Sure.
All right. Would anybody care to make the first motion?
I'll make a motion to approve application for payment number 6 to York Excavating Company in the amount of $217,901.29 for the North Washington Street Water and Storm Project, which corrects and overrides the motion made in March 2025 for the same application for payment number 6, but at that time in an incorrect amount as recommended by the borough engineer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. The second motion?
I'll make a motion to approve change order number 5 of the contract with York Excavating Company in the amount of $59,240.43 for the North Washington Street Water and Storm Project as recommended by the borough engineer.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. And the payment number 7.
I'll make a motion to approve application for payment number 7, final to York Excavating Company in the amount of $250,639.33 for the North Washington Street Water and Storm Project as recommended by the borough engineer.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I heard Mr. Berger first. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Any questions for Mr. Claybaugh before we move on? All right, thank you, sir.
Sure.
That takes us to Chief Glennie. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Moon, Council. You'll have my report that was uploaded. I'll be happy to answer any questions on that. There's a couple things I'd like to highlight. We were honored being invited to the Fire Company's Awards Banquet, where they recognized 2 of our police officers for actions they took at a fire on Carlisle Street, evacuating residents. So we're very proud of those 2 for helping to get folks out. And then I guess interestingly, I don't know if that's the right term, we actually recognized the same 2 officers for the fire over here on Middle Street for helping to evacuate residents. Unfortunately, there was one resident of the Middle Street fire that didn't make it out, but they got some of the other residents out and were instrumental in that. So proud of Officers Hilliard and McDonald for the actions they took in those instances. The second is we had the fatal pedestrian accident. Unfortunately, the gentleman passed away. We did have, which will be reported next month, because it did happen April 5th, I believe it was. We had a pedestrian accident at Chambersburg and Washington Street. That accident, I don't often say this, was purely caused by weather. It was during the torrential downpour. We had some witnesses, and you just couldn't see. So I think in the truest sense of the word, that was an accident. That was the only couple things that I wanted to highlight this time. The fatal pedestrian accident, we're still wrapping up some loose ends on trying to find some camera stuff and just to verify. There was a pretty good eyewitness, so we've got an idea of what happened, and just so everybody knows, there's no indication of any speed or anything like that. It was just an unfortunate circumstance, I believe. So unless there's any questions, I think that's all I have.
Any questions for Chief Glennie?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. It's going to take us to the manager.
If I could just add real quick.
Certainly.
Not this weekend, but next weekend is Drug Take Back, which I don't want to steal your thunder, so I won't say any more about it.
No, that's okay. If you want to give the details now, that's totally fine.
Well, I'll let you with the times.
All right.
It is Saturday after, not this one, but the following one. So
That's right. April 26th is Medicine Take Back, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. across the street at the Housing Authority. Come on down, bring us your medications, prescription, over-the-counter, doesn't matter. Please don't bring us your sharps, however. And we will also be handing out free Narcan to anybody who would like Narcan. Thanks for bringing it up.
And I will remind folks also that we take prescription and drug take back right here at the Borough Building in a secure location any workday. So if folks can't make it to the drug take back site, we have a box right here. We'll take it, we'll get it in, and we'll dispose of it. So.
And there is a place to dispose of sharps at the Bonneville Fire Station. That's a drop box. It's outside the building. It's accessible at any time. Thanks for bringing that up, though.
Sure.
Yes.
I had a question for Chief Glennie. Does that include like veterinary prescriptions as well?
Yeah, if it's a prescription, I mean, any type of medication,
Okay.
yeah. Unfortunately, we get folks that, I shouldn't say unfortunately, they'll bring old shampoo and things like that. But, we take it.
Okay.
So, yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's all incinerated. It's a partnership between the department, certain community organizations, and the DEA. And it's important that things are disposed of correctly, keep it out of landfill, keep it out of our water table. So please bring it to us. I'll be there all day with some of Gettysburg's finest. We're happy to accept just about anything you bring, except those sharps, and it'll all be disposed of safely. All right. Anything else for the chief? All right, thank you. That's going to take us to the manager and the secretary, Ms. Stull.
Okay, you have my report. I'll just highlight that it's been busy, of course, with audits, and Tammy and I were able to get the workers' comp audit and the liquid fuels audit completed. Auditor General's office was here last week, and we got that finished. We'll get our findings or report back this week, so they both looked good, turned out well. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Sarah? Okay, Mr. Gable?
In addition to my written report, I wanted to report year-to-date numbers for the end of March. For the year, we currently running just under a $24,000 deficit, which is, again, to be expected for the first quarter. But as you can see, the month to date, and for the month of March, we were running a $338,000 surplus. So that small deficit will reverse as we get into April. Later into April and May as tax revenues are collected. In the borough's various fund accounts, the borough continues to have a robust general fund liquid cash account, just over $1 million in reserve and another $1.1 million in liquid cash for expenses. So that small deficit I just reported on, not to worry. We have plenty of money to cover our bills so far, year to date. In addition to that, I just wanted to report for America 250, it's starting to hear a lot of buzz about that out and about in various circles. I am a member of the Commission for Adams County. I am the chair of the Events Committee for the Adams County local commission here in Adams County. The commission or the Events Committee has received multiple applications for endorsement of America 250 commemorative events. All of those can be seen on Destination Gettysburg's website. On the screen behind me are the events that have been endorsed by the Adams County America 250 Commission. And there are events that are starting to percolate for 2026. Again, the commission's goal is to have 250 events in 2026 in commemoration of America 250. A lot of exciting things percolating, and you'll hear more about that in the coming months. With that, I entertain any questions before we get into the motions or while we are into the motions.
Any questions at this point? All right. Let's get into those motions. Who would like to start?
I'll make a motion to approve all bills and payrolls for the month as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a COLA increase.
I'll make a motion to authorize a COLA increase for retired police pensioner Craig Staley to be paid from the police pension plan effective March 1, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. The first MOU on cameras.
I'll make a motion to authorize the finalization and the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the property owner, Gettysburg Hotel Investors, for the installation of surveillance cameras at locations on the exterior of the Gettysburg Hotel building for use in certain areas of Lincoln Square in order to provide enhanced safety and security for borough residents, visitors, and businesses located within the downtown area of the borough. J. Matthew Moon, President of Borough Council, and Sarah L. Stull, Borough Secretary, are hereby authorized to sign, attest, execute, and deliver the MOU on behalf of the Borough of Gettysburg.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Chief, would you mind providing a little background on this project, please?
Sir,
These
cameras were...
Check your mic. Thanks.
Certainly, these surveillance cameras were written into our grant proposal that was late '22, early '23, for a local communities, part of the COVID funding for safety and security. And the cameras were written in. The grant actually tied all the dollars back to enhancing solvability for major crimes. So we took a look at that, and since the majority of all the traffic that comes through Gettysburg goes through the square, we determined the best place for any type of visual surveillance to get some of the traffic coming through, if we needed it for severe crimes or serious crimes, would be on the square. So there's cameras going up in 2 locations. The next motion will be the other side, and the cameras will go up on the hotel and then the old bank building and cover the whole square for everything for ingress and egress. It will get the sidewalk as well. And the square and adjacent businesses are there's not a lot of crime, but we get the retail thefts and those sorts of things from businesses there. So it will also capture people coming in and out and then going through the square. So that's the reason that we chose the square. To answer Mr. Petter's question, is especially vehicular traffic. I won't say every car that comes through the borough goes through the square, but I would venture to guess that 80% of it does. So that's the reason for the location, and that's a little bit of the background and history of it, is that these grant dollars were also tied to solvability factors. And everybody watches TV now and sees that, there's video of everything now. So that's the main reason.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any more discussion on these MOUs?
Haven't we had cameras there before 2022?
So we do not. The borough has no cameras anywhere. They have cameras on the hotel, which are owned by, there was some news cameras up there for a while. I think there's some traffic cameras up there. They work, they don't work. You don't have access to footage. Unfortunately, what we find, a lot of places where we think we have cameras, we're running into this, unfortunately, with the fatal accident we had, where we think we have cameras would have a great view of the event that occurred. Well, it wasn't recording that time, or it was out of service. We are working on starting a camera register for anybody that's interested, that folks can register their outdoor cameras, because what we do when we have some sort of crime or any type of incident now, our officers will oftentimes go door to door watching and looking to see if somebody has a doorbell camera, or they have, the Ring doorbell cameras, other cameras outside. And we have solved some minor stuff up to some more severe stuff, or got pictures of people running from, I'll use a shooting, for example. A few years ago, we had a shooting. We got some good footage of people running from the scene, and we're able to identify a perpetrator or verify the identity of a perpetrator because of those cameras. So the answer is yes, there were cameras on top of the hotel, but access to them was not always there. Were they working? That wasn't always there. So the borough surveillance, or us having surveillance there and available is definitely handy. The college has a very good surveillance system up, and we often get video from the college. So that's been instrumental in solving some capers, if you will, as well.
Thank you.
I like to call them capers. I think we should do that. All right. Any further questions? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. The next MOU?
I'll make a motion to authorize the finalization and the execution of a memorandum of understanding with the property owner, Twin Bridges Farm LLC, for the installation of surveillance cameras at locations on the exterior of the former Adams County National Bank building for use in certain areas of Lincoln Square in order to provide enhanced safety and security for borough residents, visitors, and businesses located within the downtown area of the borough. J. Matthew Moon, President of Borough Council, and Sarah L. Stahl, Borough Secretary, are hereby authorized to sign, attest, execute, and deliver the MOU on behalf of the Borough of Gettysburg.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. All right, the next motion, please.
Make a motion to authorize and ratify the option invoked by the borough in order to renew and extend its contract with Waste Management, Inc. for the performance of the provision of services for the collection and disposal of municipal solid waste and the collection of recyclables in the borough of Gettysburg. The renewal and extension shall be for an additional one-year term with no change in the price or fees charged by Waste Management, Inc. for the provision of such collection and disposable services, and said additional term shall extend through March 31st, 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion will carry. And then lastly, we have Torian Moses reappointment.
I had a question about this last motion,
Okay.
just about waste management. I just wanted to know if we could just hear from our borough manager. I know that we had issues with this company early on when they first had the contract signed with us. Where are we with that? Or obviously, we're renewing them for another year, so they must have changed things around a
Do
bit.
you mind if I jump in there, Charles?
Sure, you're saving me from Mr. Bales's nodding of how frank we want to be at the moment.
We'll be renewing this for one more year, and then we are free to pursue different services should we wish to in the next calendar year.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for that clarification.
I would add that there's in our next contract with whomever that, the winner of that contract will be, we'll have a different, we'll have different contract provisions. So if you remember, we're starting to incorporate the concept of including commercial waste
Yep.
in the next contract. There's a few things we need to iron out before we bid that.
Okay.
We need a little more time.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
All right, Torian Moses.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 041425-2, appointing Torian Moses as a member of the Gettysburg Borough Local Human Relations Commission for a 5-year term of office expiring in April 2030.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. All right, that takes us to our liaison reports for the night. We'd like to start, if we may, with Jill Sellers and Main Street, Gettysburg.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. No surprise, we're going to start at Christmas real quick. I promise it'll be fast. I believe we announced we're going to be absorbing a couple of events. So the tree lighting and Tuba Carol Fest are coming our way on the first Friday of Christmas. So we are deep into figuring out what that's going to look like, how it's going to function, but it's going to be a great addition. We also had the opportunity of attending a reenactor recruitment event that happened on Steinway Avenue, and I'm really excited that there were a lot of those organizations and units that want to come and participate, which I think is going to give a nice historic flavor to our festival. So make it one of a kind, as is Gettysburg. So in the absence of Mrs. Butterfield, I'm going to report on the bid. So we meet regularly, of course, with the bid. Last meeting was April 3rd. We discuss all the regular business, including upcoming things like the flower baskets that will be going up soon when the weather settles. Of course, the Christmas festival and the Brass Band Festival that's going to be happening in June. And there'll be an event on Steinway Avenue to add to that event that's happening. We're also going to be meeting, and this is an announcement for Steinway Avenue businesses, on April 21st at 9 o'clock. We're going to be meeting at the Gettysburg Heritage Center, we're to specifically talk about the Christmas festival. So businesses are invited. We just really want their participation. We want their ideas. We're just really opening the floor and hoping for participation on that. So April 21st at 9, please contact me if you got questions or show up on that date. Had a couple of great opportunities in this last month as a Main Street manager, one of which was the state Pennsylvania Downtown Center reached out to me and asked if I would host a workshop for a traveling Main Street program. The state of Wyoming is so small that they do not have a state conference, so they travel to the National Main Street Conference every year. And wherever that goes, they go a few days ahead of time, and they work with other main streets to do what they call a best practices tour. So I had the privilege of hosting 32 delegates from the state of Wyoming, and we talked about succession planning. That was my workshop. So really a great thing. And then we all traveled to Philadelphia, where we went to the national conference. That was the first for, I think, Main Street Gettysburg to attend a national conference. It's not usually in our budget. But me and 2,000 of my colleagues were there, spent time at the Kimmel Center, got to hear Governor Shapiro speak, really had an extraordinary opportunity to over about 100 different workshops and sessions to find ways to solve problems that are so similar across municipalities. And it's always very interesting to see where the dovetails are. So really a tremendous opportunity between leaders, urban planners, and economic developers to solve problems together. Elm Street, I met with my Elm Street committee today. We are in the final phases of finishing the planning assessment that has been happening over the last several months. And what I hope to come from that is some recommendations for implementation. We will be looking for grant opportunities and other things to implement in the Third Ward area. We're working with the Adams County Historical Society on the Hopkins House. We're working with the Lincoln Cemetery Preservation Association on things we can do for the Lincoln Cemetery, as well as just neighborhood beautification and getting neighbors involved. And there's some really stellar ideas to be able to really dress up and remind and brand old Getty Place and bring it back to bring its history and its prominence back to the spotlight. So, the Gettysburg Welcome Center, lots of things are finally happening. Years and years of planning. The first shout out is an actual physical effort. So my shout out to the Public Works guys who are taking down the trees, which is the first step in starting to make the property ready for next steps. If we stay on track, we're going to be looking at demolition this summer. So we'll be scheduled to meet with HARB soon and taking the next steps in all the paperwork and otherwise. I'm working with the borough manager, and we're figuring out all the congressional appropriation for the grant monies that are going to pay for this project, and we're coming to the end of hopefully that successful process. And last shout out is to our volunteers. We did have a volunteer luncheon last month, and I want to happily announce that Lynn Heller is one of our most amazing volunteers. She volunteers endless hours, unfortunately, at the David Wills House, which she will not be doing. She is an incredible expert in that particular area, and but she's more than willing to volunteer elsewhere, as many other volunteers that we have. So shout out to the community that if they want things to do in the community as a volunteer, there's plenty of opportunity with Main Street Gettysburg and about 100 other nonprofits that would love to have your selfless service. So have any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Any questions from Ms. Sellers? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Carr couldn't be with us tonight. I don't think he had anything for Gara. The Municipal Authority, Mr. Berger.
Yes, we did meet last month, and on Washington Street, everything's wrapped up on the water side. The Andrews Well, we're finishing up the permit process and getting approval from the township, Cumberland, for the land development and subdivision, so it's getting close to be put out to bid. The Interceptor project's moving along, installing the main, about 3/4 of the way done on Water Street, and approaching Washington Street next week or so. Mark Geis has said that he would come to a workshop meeting just to update on some projects, so could be next month or whenever you'd want to.
I know I would appreciate that. There's been a lot of water and sewer work going on, and there's even more coming up in the next year. I think that would be really great to get an update on that. Does anybody have any opposition to inviting Mark to our May workshop? All right. Would you mind extending that invitation to him? Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for bringing that up. All right. Thank you. Did you have anything else? I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
All right. Mayor Freeling, ACPA.
Yes, our last meeting was March 17th, and the highlight of the meeting was Logan Hoover, who is a South Central Pennsylvania regional manager for Senator Dave McCormick, was there to tell us about how Senator McCormick is going to address who answers to whom in this district and what his districts are going to be. He also said that he would like to have coffee with the chief, that I gave you that information. That was the first thing. And he also he reached out that he would like to visit local elected officials. So if you would like to arrange that, I have his contact information, Matt, that I will share with you.
Please do.
Okay? That's it. In short, next meeting is May 19th.
All right. Thank you. All right, Mrs. Butterfield was unable to join us this evening to talk about the COG. Ms. Lawson, do you have anything for Happy?
Yep, Happy met last week. They are working on additional grants to help with the trail through the greater Gettysburg area. Happy will be celebrating its 25th anniversary in the fall and the 10th anniversary of their ride, which is their big fundraiser that they do in October. And you'll hear more about that later. So thank you.
Thank you. Similarly with ACTPO, Mrs. Butterfield is our usual liaison. Mr. Berger, anything on the trail feasibility study?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
What? Oh, my God.
No, everybody, let's go. No.
I talked to Dennis Hickathier, he's my point person, and the National Park Trail Study that I've mentioned has been taking ages. The public comment period is coming up, so they're going to provide a meeting for the public. That could be with next month or two that I hear. He's trying to drill down on that to get back to me, but heard some promising words. It's still on track. Funding's still there. So
Great.
it's in the National Park's hands, and seems like we might hear something soon.
Cool. All right, well, thank you for that
Sure.
surprise. That was lovely. All right. On the subject of recycling, I will say on behalf of Mrs. Butterfield and Ms. English, we do have 2 borough recycling events coming up. We have the electronics recycling event, which is going to be on Saturday, May 17th. And then, I'm sorry, I should have done it the other way. On Friday, the 16th of May, we have the paper shredding event. That is free to borough residents. People in the surrounding townships may participate for, I believe it's $3 a box, which is pretty reasonable. $4 a box? All right. And then the electronics recycling on Saturday, the May 17th, is restricted to residents of the borough. Both of those events need to be pre-registered, and you can do that through Deb English's office. All right. That takes us to elected officials' comments. Mayor Freeling.
I attended the last board meeting of the Pennsylvania Municipal League, and I just wanted to give you some things I thought you may be interested in March. Radar. Okay, I'm sorry. I attended the last Pennsylvania Municipal Board meeting. I'm a member on the board, and I just wanted to give you some highlights of legislation they're watching. One is radar. They don't know where it's going to go. However, you may be interested, Chief, in that they're looking into red light, okay? Using red light. So are you familiar? I'm sure you're familiar with that. What are your feelings?
I have no issues with it. It's currently legal in municipalities of 20,000 people or more. I believe it would be a good tool here in the borough, as we've discussed, I think more so in our leadership meetings. But red light enforcement in Gettysburg is extremely difficult because of the stop lines that we have are set back so far so these big vehicles can make the turns that it's near impossible, because the Vehicle Code Title 75 says that if you clear that stop bar or stop line before the light turns red, it's no longer a red light violation. So if you can't see the stop bar or stop line because it's set back so far, and a vehicle comes through the intersection after the light's red, you can't cite that vehicle. You have to be able to see the stop bar. So I think that there would be some assistance there. The red light camera enforcement things are a civil enforcement issue, so it's not it's not like you would get a ticket for going through the red light and get points on your license. They're a civil thing. It's a smaller fine, no court costs, and then I think there's an appeal process for it. So I am definitely for it. And as far as radar, I've been doing what I do for 37 years, and for 37 years we've been going to get radar next year, so I will not hold my breath.
Okay, this was in the House Transportation Committee, and they said that municipal police using red lights, they must be accredited. Okay. just passing it on. The next thing that I just wanted to update you on is public notice advertising. Senator Mastriano has introduced Senate Bill 194. And what it says is that there are different ways that you can do public notice other than in local papers, and one of the ways is on municipal websites. Just passing it along. And the Pennsylvania Municipal League believes the bill has a good chance of moving out of committee. That's just FYI.
That's great. All right. Anything else?
No, I don't.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Any other elected officials' comments? Not seeing any? All right, that's going to take us to our second public comment section of the evening. This section is not restricted to items appearing on the agenda. You can speak on any topic. We do ask you to use the podium. Please state your name and address of residence, and please limit yourself to 5 minutes. Is there any public comment?
Good evening, members of council and community. My name is Brandon Stone. I live at 358 Park Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I want to raise a concern that weighs heavily on many of us, and that is pedestrian safety in our town. As a community with a rich historical legacy and a strong tourism presence, we welcome hundreds of thousands of visitors each year. While this is vital for our local economy and culture, it increases the daily foot traffic on our streets, particularly in the downtown and battlefield-adjacent areas. Gettysburg is a unique and cherished place. Our streets are constantly alive with people, residents, school groups, history lovers, and families, walking everywhere. The bustle brings with it an undeniable risk when our infrastructure and enforcement do not keep up with our pedestrian needs. We all talk about close calls, but sometimes those close calls aren't close. They're fatal. In the span of the past 30 days, a pedestrian has been struck and killed on West Street, and while 2 others were injured crossing a busy intersection near Town Circle. The tragic loss of life was a shock to many, but it's not a surprise to those who've long experienced the dangers of walking in town. Just last week, I was almost struck while crossing Baltimore Street at the Circle. This is why I'm here tonight. Our visitors are unfamiliar with the town rule that you must be mindful that most vehicles will not yield. And it is just not about notifications or signs. It's about the people, the drivers, the families, the friends, and neighbors. This behavior must be addressed. It will happen again any day if we don't act decisively. I strongly urge the borough to implement the following. Install more highly visible, well-lit crosswalks, particularly near busy intersections and tourist destinations. Enforce the speed limits in the downtown core, on Steinway, and other pedestrian-dense areas. Add traffic calming measures, such as raised crosswalks or curb bumps to slow vehicle speeds. Select locations would greatly benefit from calming crosswalks, including the Town Circle, High Street in South Washington, and Long Lane in Getty, and invest in red light cameras in the downtown core. And most importantly, enforce the laws that are currently on the books. We've all seen drivers roll through stop signs, speed through crosswalks while using their phones, ignore no turn on reds, run through red lights. Without consistent enforcement, even the best designed streets fall short. A stronger police presence and more citations for infractions will help change behavior and ultimately save lives. Pedestrian safety is not optional. It is a fundamental part of making Gettysburg a livable, walkable town. We owe it to our community and every person who walks on the streets to make that a reality. And remember, improving walkability is just not a safety issue. It enhances our town's livability, accessibility, and reputation as a welcoming destination. Thank you for your time and your commitment to keeping our streets safe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any further public comment?
Dave Petters, 13 Lincoln Square. I want to thank you for the information I received tonight with the parking and everything. I'm really amazed that kind of revenue in the middle of the winter. So it will be interesting to see how much of that revenue is actually coming out of the parking garage and will be in danger of being lost with these new programs. But I would still encourage that we need to think ahead and find ways to get the bedroom communities into downtown during the winter. I was also very interested in hearing about the traffic cameras and everything, and I think that's a good place to start, but I'm sure there's other places in the town that could deserve that attention. So I guess really the word certain areas in downtown square maybe were not appropriate there, but that's okay. And I want to attach to the safety issues downtown, particularly, and there's not an easy way to say this, but there's a lot of demonstrations on the weekends in the town square. It is the most dangerous area in our community. These demonstrations can really distract drivers, certainly not intentionally, but they do have signs, they do have noise and everything, and drivers are going to hear that and be distracted even more. I'm not sure what we can do about it. I understand everyone has that freedom and right, but maybe the town square, the most dangerous place in traffic, is not the place for those permitted events. Maybe there's other locations. Maybe the courthouse be like half the traffic. Again, thank you for your service to the community. Thank you, Chief, for your report, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Any further public comment? All right, seeing none, we will adjourn to executive session.